Iron Nation, how we doing? It's your boy Rob Napoli, and this podcast has been in the works for about a year. And I mean, we've been trying to sit fucking down for about a year to get this on the books, but we've been so busy going back and forth, our schedules haven't aligned. But I'm excited to have my friend Nick Capozzi on the show. Nick, how we doing, man?
Rob, I couldn't be better, and I was also jazzed up for this. The reason we waited was because there was talk of, am I coming through New York, or I wanted to do this in person with you, but this is gonna be great nonetheless.
And I was trying to come down to Phoenix, and we are trying to make that happen. And there's just so much that was like going on that I kept it. And so Nick is kind of, I mean, this guy. So we'll get into your background a little bit, but he is the co-founder of a community called Social, which is a social media think tank, which is absolutely amazing. You're the head of storytelling at Demostack, and you got that Demostack representing right there. You are a king of videos, king of brand evangelism. Basically, this guy with Demostack decided to get a Jeep, wrap it, and went on a fucking nation tour, except didn't make it all the way to the east to New York. That was what we are trying to make happen. And just went out and created content everywhere. And I fucking loved it. So there's two type of main topics I want to cover, which is, content creation and then brand evangelism.
Yep.
So let's start on the brand side of things. I think this is really interesting and it's a hot topic, but just before I jump into that, give us your quick background, because you have a unique background, which I love when you share it. So tell us about where did you get your start, and how did you fall in love on the brand side? Like, because you weren't on the brand side originally, you were a seller,
Yep.
and you've worked your way into content and brand. So tell me about your little journey to where you are today.
Well, the irony was I was selling brands, but I'll get to that. So, real quick backstory: I went to college for radio. I knew as a kid I wanted to work in radio, so I went to Humber College in Toronto. I was in radio and then TV for about 5 years. One day I was at a party and someone said, "Can you do this radio thing on a stage?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" Next thing I knew, I stepped onto a cruise ship in Miami, spent 10 years living at sea, pitching brands, high-end luxury duty-free. When you think duty-free, you think like Toblerone bars and perfume, but it was like really high-end Swiss watch houses, jewelry brands that you know. And we were presenting these concepts on a stage. So I have like 10,000 hours on a stage pitching, trained 800 people how to be live stage presenters, moved shoreside, became an executive, worked for the biggest cruise line companies in revenue. And then I pivoted to tech by accident because I started posting content on LinkedIn about 2.5 years ago about what I knew, which was sales presentation skills. And that's it, man. That's the long and the short of it. But today I am the head of storytelling at Demostack, and that's a marketing evangelist role. So I'm creating awareness for the brand, and it's kind of a mix of content, video content specifically, and then about a third live events and a third virtual events. So that's kind of my day job.
I love it. And when you were doing one, you have the perfect like radio voice for sure. I love, like, it's amazing. Like, you were meant to be behind a microphone. Um, when you kind of got into this live, the stuff on the cruise line, what about it excited you? Like, why did being on a stage, like, you're selling other people's brands,
Yep.
right? Now on a cruise ship, there's, you're basically on a floating ship, right? And there's nothing else to do besides what's on that ship, right? It's not like, I mean, you have a couple day excursions, but for the most part, you're spending your time either in your room, at the bar, at the food court, at the pool, whatever the activities are, and you're there to go be active. But like, here you are trying to sell them to buy stuff. So like, what made that exciting for you, and what was it about that you thought just made it fun? Like, what about being at sea made it fun for you to be around all these people selling brands and like?
Well, let me tell you, being at sea and living on cruise ships is a whole other conversation. I mean, I could be a Netflix series just sitting on a couch telling you cruise ship stories. I mean, what kind of true crime do you want, Rob? Because I've seen it, I've lived it. But I'll park that. I think from a sales perspective, like I love being on stage, right? I was still a radio guy, except now I had a 500 person audience. And what was cool about it was that, like, if you are thinking about taking a cruise and you're coming from Brooklyn in the winter, when are you thinking about your cruise? You're thinking about it like on the train, like 3 weeks in advance as you're heading into Manhattan, right? So, but you're not thinking about buying duty free. If you're thinking about you're thinking about the sun, first of all, you're thinking about the pool, the islands, what excursions I want to go on. But if you are thinking about revenue departments, you're thinking about excursions, the spa, the casino, the sexy departments. So we weren't sexy. So what was cool was now that I have this terminology from tech, I can use it, but we were doing demand gen with video content like in 1999. We were giving value in 1999, like helping people out and solving problems to get them to understand what we did. So I think part of the reason I fit so well was like my personal ethos and how I look at myself as like a hotelier on the cruise ships, hotelier first, seller second, I think has really helped me in the B2B space. And I think that's also what's really cool now was, my brand background, these were like big, like brands that like are sponsoring the FIFA World Cup level of brands. So it wasn't small potatoes. And I think what was really cool was that having spent most of my career looking at selling through a B2C lens, I think now when I create content in a B2B environment, it changes it or it gives me a unique perspective because B2C is sexy. It's chicken wings and beer and Nikes, right? Well, an efficiency tool is not sexy. Saving you time and money is not sexy. How do you make it interesting? And to me, it's about making it experiential.
I love that. And honestly, I think that's part of what I love and why I love, working in brand and wrote a book on it is I worked in B2C. I sold shoes, is what I started in retail. And I had Ronell Richards on the podcast and we talked about, when you're selling shoes, it's the thing that was why I became a top shoe seller is I would ask like, what kind of running do you do? Like, what kind of gait do you have? Like, not about like trying to sell the shoes, like asking those
Right.
personal questions, but it made it really easy that when it came time to sell a shoe, it was sexy. Like, this shoe's this and it's Nike and blah, blah. And then I sold a wearable device B2C company and I helped them scale. And so when I got into that B2B kind of marketing and brand, it's like, cool, saving you time and money isn't sexy. And honestly, saving you time and money, like, isn't really a value proposition, right?
Yep.
Unless there's a few things on, but for the most part, it's process or it's something else. And the time and money is the byproduct of whatever you're saving them, right? Like you're
Right.
doing this more efficient, and the byproduct of that is time and money, right?
Right.
So how do you make that process sexy? How do you? And when you kind of put that like B2C kind of marketing, advertising, branding hat on, and you bring that to the B2B space, you can do some really cool, fun shit. Which I think if anyone has seen any of the content that Nick and you did, was the why am I blanking on his name? Your buddy that you helped, like you guys have done a lot of co-created videos that are just hilarious as fuck.
Will Aiken?
Will Aiken, the British guy, yes. Like the two of you have done so much fun collaboration,
Yeah.
making like B2B stuff just absolutely hilarious. How did so you have this brand, you're thinking about this. How did this turn into okay? How do we make brands sexy, right? How do we make B2B sexy? And how did you kind of like when you got this opportunity to be a brand evangelist in storytelling? What did it mean to you? What does brand evangelism mean to you? And why is it important to make B2B sexy in terms of content?
So first question first. So I think the way I look at it was so what we did we did a 30-day road trip and we were interviewing influencers and it was a social equity play. So basically I'm going to interview someone who's really well known in the sales tech SaaS space. We're going to shoot content for Demostack, but then I'm also going to off camera interview them, kind of produce direct, and we were gifting content. So that was the first way we kind of leveraged partnerships. The second was with these brands. So we partnered with Outreach and Vidyard. And again, it wasn't a dollar exchange, it was a social equity barter exchange. Are you willing, when we're on tour, if we're plugging you and gifting you videos, are you willing to promote the posts we're doing just through your go-to-market team, like drop in your Slack channel, but can you get 30, 40 people involved regularly? So that was incredibly effective. But to hammer home, based on your exact question, one of the companies we were working with was a gifting company. So hey, listen, sounds cool. Take a meeting. I'll send you a $50 gift card. You can use it for whatever. So that's a nice to have, right? But what we did was, as we were gifting these cards to all our speakers, we were recording their reaction, recording them going into their phone, looking at what they could get. And when we chopped this up with like 20 different people in it, this 90-second video became like super impactful about the experience of what people were actually doing. And I think that's the place brands miss. So when I talk to people who work in brand marketing, I think the way they think about it is about the whole experience, but it's more about the aesthetic experience. I find the what does it look like? What is the sound? What is our narrative? But how do you bring that to life with video? And I think that's where a lot of people need help. I think that's where the opportunity is missed. So that's the first question. Second one, in terms of brand evangelism, I think this is critical because you need to control your own audience in 2023. The one thing I've realized, you cannot rely on, you know, buying webinar time essentially with communities. What you need to do every day is have someone, whether it's your CEO, whether it's the content a content marketer experimenting with TikTok, but you need someone out there talking about your brand. And I think there's a couple ways to look at that. Quick little subset here is that one, you can look at it as we're just going to pitch, which most companies do, or you can make it about the problems you solve, and then it's kind of like it's thinly veiled promotion for your company, but really what you're doing is giving value, right? That's how I look at it.
So I kind of break that out for a second because I think that's really important. The first part you brought up, like, and I agree with you. So many brands, like, is this on brand, right? Is it the right colors? Is it the right aesthetic? Is
Right.
it the right narrative? But what misses is, like, who cares if there's no experience to it? Who cares if there's not a tangible result from it, right? And the other thing is we saw the rise of, like, the webinars and the boot camps and the courses and all that during the pandemic, and we were gobbling that up. But as we come back out of it, that there's staying power in those that have, as you said, owning their community, right?
Yep.
And so what happened, and we see this a lot now, is we see people who are hired as head of brand evangelism or brand evangelist at this
Yep.
company, and it's sometimes not the CEO, it's an influencer, it's a content creator, it's a former executive who now has their consultancy. Why? How? I mean, how have you seen this role? Why did it become a role in your opinion? And why? How does the brand evangelist help a
Yep.
company own that audience on a day to day basis? Like, let's talk. Let's kind of break that down a little bit because you went into that subset, which I love, which I want to kind of get into. So let's break that down a little bit.
So I'll tell you from my own experience. So, when SalesFeed was launched by Vidyard, so Vidyard is an incredible video communication tool specifically used by sellers. They launched a kind of comedy brand called SalesFeed. And, I'd had some discussions with Tyler Lassard, who built it, who's the VP of marketing at Vidyard. And, he wound up going with Will Aiken at the time, and which was 1,000,000% the right thing to do. And I watched what Will did. I watched how Will built this new channel for Sales Feed, how it shined a light on Vidyard, and frankly, how Will's personal brand blew up. And I said, well, that's really interesting. And I said, there's something to that. And then I started seeing more and more people get involved, or I start to notice more and more. So, like Travis Tyler from PandaDoc is one of the best. Hilarious, mixes business with humor. Will Aiken, of course. Amelia Taylor with Reggie, Arthur Castillo doing an amazing job with this at Chili Piper. And I think that's what's really interesting is that there's all these plays with evangelism and having someone out there as the face of your company. But I think there's also something to the dark social that happens behind the scenes where people like Travis, Will, Arthur, Amelia, and myself are in these WhatsApp chat groups discussing these things. And I think um, I think this is going to become more of the future. I am so bullish on community, and I think owning your audience and owning your community is so critical. And I think the best way to do it is with a brand evangelist. And where I think people get stuck, especially with a CEO, is how does a CEO who's wearing so many hats put time into developing content? So depending where you are as a company, potentially bringing in someone to do brand evangelism is really key. And that was also why we launched Social Social. So Will Aiken and Jen Allen are my partners in Social Social. And what we realized was, where I started the conversation on this was, there's a few things. There's one thing I'm good at. I can capture a lot of content really fast. My first choke point was editing, which became a problem. That was a solution we needed help with because we were capturing so much content, we just couldn't produce enough, put it through the factory to get it on social. But then the other was, how do you distribute on social? And there was all this, misinformation or anecdotal things about this is what you do on LinkedIn, this is what you do with YouTube Shorts, this is what you do on Reddit. So we built socialsocial.io, and that was really for a think tank to find what's working, what's à la minute, ready to go, and it's been very effective. So we had problems and we were looking for solutions.
I love that. I think, another a big buzzword that came out of the pandemic was like community. Everyone creating a
Yep.
community and community
Yep.
this and community that. And you saw some communities blow up, you saw some communities fall flat on their face. And I think that you kind of made a big point that community is really impactful, but you need somebody that can help evangelize the community to drive conversation. And that
Yep.
doesn't always have to be a CEO. Some companies, the CEO is the best person
Yep.
to be the face. Other companies, some CEOs like, I don't want to be the face. I got all these hats. I want to stay behind the scenes. I'm more technical, whatever. And you want to bring somebody in to do that. And I think understanding that as a company, but this idea of community, and I think as you're building social, one of the things I've seen y'all do well is that there's a lot of great people in there that want to drive conversations, right? I'm in a
Yep.
lot of Slack groups, and I was at one point I had 21 different Slack channels that were like community things, and I like removed 90% of them because I was just like
Mm.
I wasn't in any of them. I was like on the edge of all of them, and I was consuming content, but I wasn't able to really get deep because it was like notification this, and I got like notification anxiety. So
So I think real quick, sorry, Rob, you were going to lob me a question, but just really quick point. I think the key with the community is picking one and really going deep. So I think deep versus wide is important here. So a great example would be Pavilion. Pavilion, if you are selling to, C-suite marketing sales leaders, that's where you want to live. So, find one community and double down on that. But sorry, I just want to make that point. Please
that
start
was
your
actually
question.
gonna be the question is what advice do you have on how to best leverage community both from a
Yep.
consumer standpoint and a business standpoint, right? And that's one of the things that I realized like I needed to cut back and go deep in a few of them,
Yep.
one or two of them I'm really passionate about, and it's kind of changed the game in terms of networking, connections, and opportunity. But to make a community really work, we have these brand evangelist roles, and there's a lot of companies trying to do this. So, what, in your opinion, makes a good brand evangelist? Like, what are the things that that role should be doing, that person should be doing for the brand, and how do they capitalize on that position?
I think they need to have a deep understanding of the product. That's the most important. Are they a good fit for the product? I was a good fit with Demostack because I taught presentation skills and Demostack helps you give a much better demo, right? So to me, part of the reason that we had so much success, both myself and for Demostack, was there was such an alignment between the two. I think that's really key. I think that there's a lot of young people who are maybe new, maybe like an SDR who's like, look, I don't want the pressure of carrying this bag, but I like the space and I can talk about the space. And I think you need to look at them, especially another big thing we did was I was on the road 120 days in 8 months in 2022. So I was everywhere. I had a tripod and a mic ready to go. So if you can find someone who can talk about it, is aligned with your product, and can get in front of people and aren't afraid to use a camera, you can develop interviewing skills. All you have to do if you want to become a better interviewer is read any Larry King's book. If you remember Larry King Live, one of the best interviewers ever. Joe Rogan, take politics out of the equation, is such a brilliant interviewer. And the reason is this is a key point. Zoe Hartsfield taught me this. Full credit to Zoe. He has inverse charisma. He's so fucking curious about who he's talking to and the subject matter that he pulls out their most engaging and charismatic self more than they could ever get to on their own, right? So do you have someone, can you find someone who is really into the topic and can learn some interviewing skills? And then a big part of what we did was bartering content. We either collaborated on content or we would shoot content for us, but then hey, we chopped up 3 videos. I'm not in it. This is for your own social, helps to make friends.
It does. I mean, I for every podcast that I do for my guests, we chop up three, four, five, six piece of content that's just them, and it's
Yep.
them with a fire quote, fire, knowledge bomb. It's like here,
Yep.
and I put it in a real format, right? Like I think Square Video was out a long time ago. In fact, real format. Most people are on their phones, even on
Portrait.
LinkedIn, so it gets
Yep.
better plays because it's using full real estate. I'm like, here's 5 reels that you can throw on TikTok, you can throw on YouTube Shorts, you can throw on Instagram, you can throw on LinkedIn tomorrow. Here you go. And I think one of the things that brands are starting to realize, the ones that are really taking off, is that power and collaboration. It used to be like, oh, I don't want to
Mhm.
like share my stuff or blah blah. Cross pollination can be such a big thing in the space.
I love that, and most people miss that, and I think that's we've kinda gone through the foundation, we've now built the house, we put the roof on. The drywall is actually that, and I think that's really key is partnerships, and that's the opportunity that's missed. And if you look at there's an amazing newsletter that Partner Hacker puts out, big fan of the content, and, people want to be better partners to each other. They don't know how to do it. And I think sometimes the way people look at partnership is like, well, what else is in the sales tech stack? How do I work that into conversation? I'm so worried about closing my deal. Do I actually want to bring up partners? But I think there's opportunities either in content collaboration or through events. We did an amazing party, Demostack did last year with Avnio. We did a party with Lavender and JB Sales in Toronto. So, what are ways that you can collaborate? So you're bringing collaborators together who are making content together. What does that look like? That partnership is the missed opportunity. And if you're looking for a North Star on that, I'm telling you that Partner Hacker newsletter is fire.
The last question on brand evangelism is, what do you think about, there's a lot of conversation about this, like, people in the frontline folks like SDRs and account executives have, kind of building their own personal brands and
Yep.
kind of becoming mini brand evangelists. What's your opinion on that? Because there's some really like big debates on that going on the internet. So what is your feeling on that as a brand evangelist yourself?
I think there's certain people who could transcend brand evangelists and actually become their own media company. And I look at them very differently. So I think you have content creators, you have true influencers, people with like big followings who've earned that following, and then you have people who are not a lot of them right now, but people who are looking to become media companies. I've got someone out of the SaaS space. His name's Sean Walchef from Cali Barbecue Media. He's got 4 fucking podcasts talking about fucking barbecue and how to grow your restaurant, and he takes you through building your restaurant. What's necessary for that? So he's built he is a media company. He's not an influencer anymore. So and if you just look at some of the sponsorships he has, I don't want to talk out of school. But that's what the opportunity is. And I think what happened, you mentioned courses before. I think part of what happened post pandemic was that was hot. People were looking for solutions, but a lot of people did it. And there was a lot of kind of templated how to post, what to post, blah, blah, blah. And so many people were doing that LinkedIn became more crowded. But according to LinkedIn, 1% of people who are regular users, and I'm pretty sure I have this right, but according to LinkedIn, 1% of people who are active users, and by active, they mean it logging in at least once a week, create content. Well, how many of that 1% are creating video content? 1% of 1%? So that's the opportunity. And the other thing that's interesting, and this is one of the things we actually teach in social, is how to make content at scale. Because the key thing is you want quality always. Like don't throw up shit, but you need volume. If you can be posting 30 videos a month, which sounds crazy, but like that's like 3 hours of work if you have a plan. And we'll teach you that in social. But if you're posting 30 videos a month, you become instantly recognizable. You become a face. They might not stop all the time, but I also will tell you this, everyone who's bought from you has been a lurker, not people liking and commenting. It's the people who are lurking. So the more you are visible, the more people are aware with you, the more niche you get. It was a problem I had when I got out of cruise. I'm like, I'm a fucking generalist. Like my versatility, the fact that I can think from a marketing, sales, brand, SDR, customer success. That's what I'm hanging my hat on. No one fucking bought from me. The more niche I got, the more into this really granular detail, right? The more people bought from me. So, don't again go deep, don't go wide.
Yeah. And that's hard because you have a lot of passions, and it's okay to have those passions. But this is where I say, the lurkers have always been the crux of my business. I mean, I've talked openly about how a lot of my business I've never had to do outbound
Yep.
in the last
Same.
2 years because there's so many people lurk on my content.
Yeah.
But it's not so much my content as much as my engagement as well. I engage on 5 posts a day. People see me commenting, people see me engaging, people see me doing this, so that as they're lurking, like, oh, Rob knows this person, or Rob knows that person, or Rob's engaged with that content, Rob's and that conversation. And like, it creates a better fun. And this is where brand evangelists, I think, this is why companies should have a brand evangelist, but
Yep.
also why they should allow their employees to be mini brand builders within their kind of role of what they're doing if they're a seller or whatever, because they can also kind of create some just organic conversation by being them.
So I always tell people, so let's say you're a solopreneur trying to build your own business or a B2B, Series D company or an SDR just starting out. There's three ways you can create influence and create engagement. You can either create content, you can curate content, especially position yourself as a news source. And then finally, you can comment on content. Commenting on content is the most important, to your point. You can build a whole fucking business off following the right people and commenting on their content. But if you do all three things together, you're unstoppable.
I mean, it's, there's a book, I don't remember who wrote it, called The Social Soul, that talks about that exact playbook in his book.
Never heard of that. Hold on, I'm going in my Amazon right now.
No, I mean, literally, I have the 6 C's of building a brand
Yep.
in my book called The Social Soul, and three of them are curate, comment, and create. Like those are three of the 6 C's of building a brand. And I've been talking about this for years, and I love that you're bringing that up, and you just so rightly identified that. Bear Nation, thanks for listening to the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review.